burial alive, the thought sends shivers down anyone's spine. Yet throughout history, myths and rumors have persisted about cultures that buried their daughters alive if they remained unmarried. These tales, while largely exaggerated or misunderstood, have left an indelible mark on the societies they involve. But where do these stories come from? Are they based on truth, or are they the results of cultural misunderstanding, fear, or legend? Today, we dive into the dark and chilling myth of burying unmarried girls alive. This is Who Knows? One of the earliest and most well-known versions of this myth comes from the Jahiliyyah. This era was marked by tribal warfare, a strict patriarchal society, and a deep sense of honor attached to family and clan. According to historical accounts, some tribes practiced the ritual killing of newborn daughters by burying them alive, believing girls were a financial burden and a source of shame. In these societies, men were the protectors and breadwinners, while women were often viewed as a liability. If a family couldn't arrange a suitable marriage, it would be seen as a disgrace. This cultural pressure led to the myth that some tribes went to extreme lengths, burying young girls alive to avoid the perceived dishonor of an unmarried daughter. This practice was strongly condemned in later periods, as new social and moral codes emphasized the importance of protecting all members of society, particularly women. Cultural reforms and evolving beliefs brought an end to these horrific acts, elevating the status of women and condemning the practice of killing daughters. As time passed, the myth of burying girls alive spread beyond the Arabian Peninsula, largely due to misinterpretations by travelers and foreign historians. Many Western scholars in the 18th and 19th centuries wrote about this practice, often exaggerating it or misunderstanding local customs. While some forms of female infanticide may have occurred, the idea of widespread organized burial of unmarried girls was largely a misrepresentation. Part of the confusion stems from the intense importance of honor and reputation in many Middle Eastern societies. A family's honor was often linked to the marriageability of its daughters. This, coupled with strict marriage traditions, led some to believe that failing to marry off a daughter was such a disgrace that drastic measures like burying them alive were taken. However, historical evidence suggests that while honor killings and harsh punishments were real, the practice of systematically burying unmarried girls alive was more myth than reality. Moving eastward, we find a similar myth in ancient China. In the rural countryside, daughters were often seen as less valuable than sons. This was particularly the case during times of economic hardship, where a family might struggle to provide dowries for daughters. The practice of female infanticide was tragically not uncommon, though it took different forms. The myth here was not so much about burying unmarried girls alive, but rather the drowning of newborn daughters who were considered a financial burden. It's important to note that while this practice was recorded in certain parts of rural China, it was not universal. These killings often occurred in secret, and were the result of deep-seated economic and social pressures rather than any organized cultural or religious mandate. This legend, however, contributed to the broader myth that girls who couldn't be married off were viewed as disgraces. Despite significant reforms over the centuries, the preference for sons persisted in parts of China, particularly during the one-child policy era, where sex-selective abortions led to a dramatic imbalance between male and female populations. This imbalance and the financial pressures of dowries kept the myth of daughters being burdens alive in the cultural consciousness. In India, we find a different but related myth. The notion that unmarried girls bring dishonor to the family is deeply ingrained in some traditional communities. The infamous practice of sati, where widows were expected to burn themselves on their husband's funeral pyre, reflects the extreme measures tied to female honor. Though sati was banned in the 19th century, it reveals the intense societal pressures on women. While the idea of burying unmarried women alive was not a common practice in India, stories of honor killings do exist. In highly conservative areas, if a woman was unable to marry or was perceived to have dishonored her family, whether through sexual relationships outside of marriage or even being the subject of unwanted attention, her life was at risk. These acts were not burial but rather murder in the name of family honor, a form of violence still tragically seen in some areas today. While the literal burying of unmarried girls alive is largely a myth, cultural pressures surrounding marriage and female honor remain a harsh reality in some societies. The myth persists because of the powerful symbolism it carries, the fear of dishonor and the extreme lengths families would go to preserve their status. In today's world, many countries have made significant strides toward gender equality. Yet in places where ancient traditions still hold strong, the pressures on women to marry remain intense. Unmarried women in certain cultures still face stigma and exclusion, though not the literal fate of being buried alive. For many women, the choice to remain unmarried, pursue a career, or live independently is seen as a challenge to long-standing cultural norms. And while the practice of killing or burying girls alive has thankfully faded into myth, the emotional and psychological pressure tied to marriage persists for many. The myth of burying unmarried girls alive has haunted the annals of human history. It reflects the intense societal pressures placed on women across various cultures, and how myths often arise from very real fears and anxieties. While most of these tales are not literally true, they point to a deeper, disturbing reality: the lengths to which societies have gone to control and dictate the lives of women. Today, these myths remind us of the importance of challenging harmful traditions and advocating for the rights of women everywhere. From pre-Islamic Arabia to modern times, the stories we tell about our past shape the future we build. Let's ensure that future is one of equality, respect, and understanding. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more fascinating explorations of culture and history on Who Knows. Subscribe to Who Knows for more untold stories from history.